We are
All
live.
right, thank you. Thank you. And good morning and welcome to this meeting of the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First order of business is the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the March 24th, 2023 meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Carney and seconded by Commissioner Cardoza.
Let me just state
Sure.
for the record before we go on to a discussion. We do have a quorum present here in Albany pursuant to Section 103-A of the Public Officers Law. Commissioner Edwards will be joining us later in the meeting remotely on account of extraordinary circumstances in her case. Let me also state that, again, in accordance with the Open Meetings Law, our meeting room here in Albany is open to the public during public session.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor and it's been seconded to approve the minutes. Are there any additions, revisions? Hearing none. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of approving the minutes from the March 24th meeting, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Meetings minutes are approved. Mr. Berlin.
Yes, before we go on to the operations report, I want to introduce to everyone our new Director of Investigations and Enforcement, Brian Weinberg, who is joining us here in Albany for the first time. Brian is a consummate public servant with nearly 20 years of investigative and prosecutorial experience, including more than 8 years overseeing public integrity cases. He has served as Deputy Chief of Public Integrity and Law Enforcement in the Law Enforcement Integrity Bureau at the Westchester County DA's office. He has also served as Special Counsel in the Public Integrity Bureau of the New York State Attorney General's office, where he focused on government corruption, fraud, and abuse of authority by public officials. And he has also been an Assistant District Attorney in the New York County District Attorney's office, overseeing investigations into public corruption by public employees. He holds a JD from Brooklyn Law School, and he's a graduate of Brandeis University. And I'd like everybody to join me in welcoming Brian to our commission.
Welcome, Brian.
Welcome.
Would you like to say anything?
Not to put you on the spot.
Not to put me on the spot, I want to welcome everyone that I have been working with for the last at least 6 days. It's been fantastic and so welcoming, and I look forward to working with everyone. And thank you.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Welcome. And let me say that shortly, beginning of May, Michael Antolini, who has been in the New York City Department of Investigations for a number of years, will be joining Brian as his assistant deputy director of the Division of Investigations and Enforcement. Mike also has a deep background in public integrity cases, and Brian and Mike will be working together to staff out that unit.
Great. Excellent. That's very good news. Welcome again.
And what's more, I've said it before, I do want to thank our Deputy General Counsel, Kavita Bhatt, for the yeoman work she has done in overseeing the unit since the inception of the agency. And now she's going to be able to go on, finally, to her new responsibilities. And I also want to thank Carol Quinn, again, our Director of Lobbying, for the work she did as one of our acting co-general counsel during the transitional period. Again, another phenomenal job done.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Sure. Thank you both.
And now the report from staff. Under Attachment B, you have the operations update. As before, we have comparisons to the prior months in each category of activity, as well as the corresponding prior year and year-to-date figures. I will say that in a number of areas, including investigations and enforcement, complaint numbers are up. Numbers of matters we've been able to move through dismissal are increasing. In some respects, our activity is at higher levels than under the prior agency in the corresponding period for last year. And if there are any questions, staff is present.
Michael?
I noticed on page 4 of Exhibit B, there's an indication that the notices of delinquency were 0 as compared to 15 last year. Is there an explanation for that?
Is Rory here? Do you want to speak to that?
It's just a matter of when we issue the notice of delinquencies. We issue the failure to file first, and then we issue the notice of delinquencies, so it's just time.
Thank
Next
you.
month, you'll see that number rise while it's gone out this month.
And it's driven by the statute. We're statutorily required to send out notices in advance that are not made public, and if we don't have compliance, then the next step is the notice of delinquency.
Any other questions on this? All right.
All right, the next item on the agenda is under, well, tab C is the budget update. The fiscal year 2022-23 is now closed. As expected, we've closed out the year with a little over 1.8 million in excess funds. We have been able to move funds from personal services, where our staffing was down and we had excess funds, to the non-personal services side, where we had some additional expenses previously talked about, relating in particular to outside counsel fees in connection with a litigation that had been brought by the former governor. We have been able to use some of those funds to retain, for the purposes of retaining, an IT consultant who will be ours exclusively for a period of 30 months. Taking a little bit longer than we would have liked to deploy the individual. There's a process with an ITS we have no control over, having to do with approvals and recruitment of the individual, but we want to make sure we have the right person. And it's going to be a great asset to us, not only in creating the systems we need for the expanded training requirements that we have, but also in completing the work that needs to be done on the lobbying application, enhancing our litigation and enforcement systems, capabilities, and hopefully, within that period of time, making some improvements in the financial disclosure statement systems that we operate.
Excellent. Comments, questions? Start with Commissioner Whittingham and then Vice Chair Austin.
Okay, so in our last meeting, I asked a question related to the second quarter. Did you
Yes.
have a response for that?
Yes, the answer is the $26,000, I think that was the item you were referring to. That was a cost.
33,000.
That was a cost we incurred in connection with the computer hack that we had. We were statutorily required to mail out notices to tens of thousands of individuals whose data, not data per se, there was an old file containing outdated usernames and passwords for the old FDS system that had been accessed. Those were no longer active. Nonetheless, we needed to inform those individuals. We had to do that by mail.
When was that? When did that occur?
The hack occurred in the latter part of 21 going into 22. Our systems were down for a number of months while ITS had to go through a whole scrutiny process. We had to go through disclosures. And then the mailings went out, I think, starting in February, March. Does that sound?
That sounds right.
February, March. And fortunately, we were able to have the Division of Taxation and Finance had the ability. We didn't have the ability to generate a mailing of 26,000, 27,000 hard copy notices. So we had the mailing costs, and we had some small administrative costs, but they were able to do that for us. So that was a one-time cost, and that's why there was the bubble that you saw for that period of time.
Thanks.
And apropos of that, then, I'm assuming that the new person coming in is familiar with cybersecurity and keeping us safe, or as safe as possible in these crazy times.
We have a team at ITS that specializes in cybersecurity. It was a large team, and we went through a period of 6 or 7 months of system scrutiny, testing, lockdown. In fact, one of our older systems is still locked down. It's an archaic system. It's the old lobbying application. It's no longer online. We've had to isolate it because of that. We still have the security people looking at that. But we went through the red tests, the blue tests, a whole series of scrutinizations. to ensure before we went back online that our systems were operating properly.
Thank you.
Right. Anything else on this? All right.
I skipped over the recruiting update. Where we are is we are revising as necessary job descriptions, creating job descriptions for the additional positions, the 21 additional positions we will be filling under the expanded staffing plan. We've pretty much filled out the old interim staffing plan. As I said, Brian and Mike will be filling out the positions in their group. We're expanding that unit from 6 individuals to 9 individuals. We still have positions that are vacant for line counsel and investigators and senior investigator in that group that have to be filled out. The other positions are new positions we're creating, including a position in the lobbying division. Carol's group is now interviewing for a number of positions in the education and training unit, an administrative position, and a whole series of positions across the agency. So we expect to get those posted and online before the next meeting, and we'll report on how that's progressing. But the goal is to move forward as quickly as we can
Right.
in filling out those positions. Well, recognizing there are growing pains that come with expanding an agency by 40%.
Comments, questions here? No? All right. So the new budget?
And the new budget.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Carvalho.
To revisit what about at the communications committee meeting about more support staff. Is that something that's under consideration?
Yes, we have a new, in effect, office manager, an admin who will be coming to the New York office. Mariana, is that May 11th? May 11th. And that individual not only will be providing administrative support in New York, where we haven't had any for over a year now, but will also be assisting with administrative matters, including assisting commissioners in various matters. And Mariana is also recruiting for one position, 2 positions now?
Yeah,
two positions now in Albany.
2 positions, support staff positions.
Support staff positions, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Those are vacant positions.
Is
Anybody
that
else?
number included in the 21 that you mentioned just now? Or in addition to the 21?
No, they are part, one of them is a new position. The others are vacant positions. We had reclassified the position in New York. It was a higher level position. We moved it down a notch because we didn't need that level of support.
Okay, so, no, I'm just asking, you said there are 21 new positions that you
Yeah,
are...
one of them is part of the new plan.
And then the others
The other
are-
2 are vacancies that we're filling.
Okay, thank you.
As you know, Michelle had left, so we're filling her position and the New York position. We reclassified it, but we reclassified it under the old plan, not under the new plan.
Thank you.
Anything else on this one? All right, the new budget.
The new budget, talked about it, both chambers, one House bills supported the governor's recommendation, which granted our request in full with an additional increment to cover us for contingencies. Also, therefore, supporting the increase in our staffing plan from 47 to 68 full-time equivalents in the agency. So we have that across the board. What we don't have is a state budget. So we're waiting on that. But I don't know that there's any reason to think that our component of the budget's going to be affected by the current negotiations. We certainly haven't heard anything, and we have no indication that will be the case.
Questions, comments? All right, communications logo.
Communications logo, our Director of Communications, and many other job titles and responsibilities, Emily DeSantis.
Thank you. I think Marlene is going to share it on the screen so everyone can see it. So we worked with OGS to design a logo to demonstrate that the commission is distinct, separate, and independent from other state agencies. And we incorporated feedback from senior staff and reviewed several iterations from OGS. So I want to thank OGS for their partnership and helping us with this design. The logo clearly identifies communications as being from the commission, so it'll appear on all of our communications going forward. It incorporates the principles of integrity, trust, and transparency, which we know are important to the commission, and we value those. And it incorporates the image of a compass to illustrate the idea of the commission as a moral compass for state government. So we'll be working on getting the new logo on all of our communications starting this week.
Great.
Yes.
It doesn't say New York anywhere. Should it?
Ethics are
I think so.
universal.
Oh, great. New York's not enough?
Yeah. We can take that feedback.
Any other comments? Sure.
And I know it's done, but when you started out in describing this, one of the first things you mentioned was the independence of this commission. And I'm struck that the word independent or independent didn't make it into a core concept of the body, because that was something I think the legislature and the governor were so committed to in recreating the body. But I know it's too late for that, but I think it's a core concept that should be
Right.
reflected someplace.
And I think that was the idea for just having our own logo in general, because New York State agencies have a very defined branding. And so now we no longer are part of that defined branding. We have our own branding and our own logo, so that in itself demonstrates our
But I think that, that is a key part of the mission statement that the commission is formulating, the concept of the commission and commissioners being independent of other authorities. And it absolutely should be expressed there, and I think emphasized.
We could also think about a tagline to go along with the logo that might capture that as well.
So we're going to work on this further. Is that?
I think
I think we'll
the
incorporate
logos.
New York into
Right.
it. That's an easy one. And then with the mission statement, with the tagline, we'll make sure to incorporate the independence concept.
Great. Okay. Commissioner Carvalho? You all right? Okay. Anybody else? All righty. Committee updates. Who is prepared to do a committee update? Okay, let's start then with it's like the legals first.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, communications. Let's do communications.
Okay, on behalf of the Communications Committee, the committee had a meeting last week in which we had a very, very, very exciting presentation from Emily DeSantis, who rolled out her overall proposed communications policy, and we discussed that at some length, and my understanding is it gave a few suggestions, and Emily will be rolling that out to all of us at our next full commission meeting in May. But it was, for someone particularly who's only been on board for 5 weeks, it was a very, very impressive and thorough document. But I think it's better to have a detailed discussion about that after she distributes what is a draft 13 or 14-page document after it's been brought up to date. So that was very useful. We also, I should have said this at the beginning, just wanted to call everyone's attention to the fact that I guess Fred or Sandy had circulated some comments about the open meetings law and some of the changes that, not relating to the physical presence problem, but some other changes, and they weren't going anywhere in this year's legislature. And as I previously reported, it seems clear that nothing is going to change in the open meetings law this year, but the open meetings law does expire by its terms sometime next year. So next year, it's inevitable that the legislature will be focusing on the open meeting law and changes, and we have to put that as a high priority given our own goals, but don't think we can, it's not realistic to expect that anything's going to happen.
And just to be clear, it's not that the entire law is repealed, but just certain provisions of the Open Meetings Law are repealed by operation of the enactment, I think July 24th of 2024.
Right.
And Michael, I just think it's also important for people to understand that our desire in looking for changes in tweaks in the Open Meetings Law really have to do with more transparency and more opportunities for people to participate in our meetings, and particularly the committee meetings, which if we can do them remotely with members as well as the public, then it's more access for everybody, and the meetings can happen more frequently.
Yes.
And less expense.
And so I think we do have to focus on that, clearly have to focus on achieving those goals as we discuss things with the legislature next year. Finally, we spent a good deal of time in the Communications Committee discussing the public meeting, what we discussed, what we learned at the public meeting, and in particular, how do we respond in more general terms as to what was said at the meeting, and how can we improve the public meeting for next year. And what we recommend is that as far as what was the comments this year, that the staff will be sending thank you letters to the various people who spoke at the meeting, and at the same time are categorizing the various issues that will then be that were raised, and referring those issues to the relevant substantive committees to further discuss, and then leaving up to them what they should be done. The committees reviewing what's been suggested, and decide how they want to move forward with respect, in consultation with staff, obviously, how they should move forward on those various suggestions. And as far as next year is concerned, there were a number of recommendations that were made relating to, number one, the date of the meeting, to be sure that we're avoiding some of the conflicts that existed, and also to take a look at how we allocate time, because it really does, in part, whether we have it a half day or a full day, but we don't know when we set it how many people are going to speak, and so we want to be sure that we're using it efficiently, and so we should need to take a look as to how we're going to allocate time, and we certainly want to generate even more attendance if we possibly can, because we want as much public input as we can for next year. So that's it. And there's one other matter that we discussed that is a subject that will be discussed at the executive session.
Sure. Thank you. Any questions, comments here? Commissioner Whittingham?
When you speak about allocating time, are you speaking specifically about how much time we'll have the meeting, or the time that's allocated to the individuals that are speaking?
Both. So, and of course, when we announce the meeting, we don't know how many people are going to sign up. We may have, by the time we do that, have a better idea. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that while we limited people to, I think it was 5 minutes, because we only had 12 people sign up, and we had set aside 4 hours, we could have allocated, if we had wanted to, more time in retrospect. And so, without deciding that issue today, we think it is something that we should be discussing among ourselves and planning for next year.
Thanks.
Other comments, questions? All right, we'll move on to the legal committee.
Thank you. The legal committee met yesterday afternoon. We dealt with 3 items. That is the code of conduct for members, our meeting rules, and you'll see them under tabs H and I. And the third one was recusal, although recusal really is part of the code of conduct. that we had. We spent 2 hours going through the various recommendations by staff, painstakingly but effectively, and I'm going to be calling another meeting in the next 2 weeks, so I'd appreciate members of the committee letting me know their availability so that we can try to put this to bed and have it for our next meeting, if it's at all possible. I would certainly note that everybody worked very diligently, very seriously, and it was very effective. And Keith and Kavita put together a fabulous outline for us to at least use as our starting point for our conversations. And we plan on continuing them and have a report for you with a completed product as soon as we can.
Well, it was a good and robust conversation yesterday.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. Comments? Questions? Sure.
So are we not going to be discussing?
It's not done yet, yes.
Yeah, because I just had a comment, irrespective of the specifics, about the meeting guidelines, and that it seems like most of the documents, staff were working off of the old Jacob policies and procedures and amending as appropriate to reflect.
That's correct.
Our new existence. But one of the things about the meeting guidelines, I thought, under our statute, which is fundamentally different than any other Ethics Commission statute, in that it's subject to both the open meetings law and FOIL, whereas all three prior commissions weren't. And because of that, I can understand that there was always a need for the prior commissions to have meeting guidelines to fill in a void that the statute, meaning the open meetings law, didn't. But now that we're subject to the open meetings law, I thought this document was a bit confusing in that, particularly the bit under meetings and hearings where it lists specific things that will be public. That might have made sense in the past, but now everything that we do is public unless it falls within one of the exceptions under 108 or it's appropriate matter for executive session. And so I thought this document had the effect of confusing things, most importantly, the public, who would look at this and say, but wait a second, I thought the ground had shifted and that now a document like this is unnecessary because the legislature took far more comprehensive action to address it. So,
And we actually did reference that in Section 3.
No, I know it's
So, you know, anything else, but we wanted to be specific about certain elements to ensure transparency in our proceedings. But the point is taken.
Yeah.
Because I think the last thing we want is confusion.
Yeah, I think the committee should.
Agreed, and if anybody else has comments that you'd like to share, if you could get them to me, I greatly appreciate it. I will tell you that yesterday's meeting was basically with regard to the code of conduct, and we barely touched the meeting's guidelines.
And on the code of conduct, if we could, I know one of the concerns that was raised related to, I think an important addition we want to make is communications among the members and their appointing authorities. And there was some confusion or a question about.
That was one of the things that we dealt with.
Yeah,
extensively.
I got to watch it.
So you know.
I was very comfortable. I could leave. I could come back.
It was open.
It was open. It was very open. But one of the things I know there was the concern about is the appointing authority and the parent's representative, and what does that mean? And listening to it all, I kept thinking, because Commissioner Ayers had a great point, that every single AAG acts on behalf of the AG, so that kind of delegation gets hard. But it seems to me every one of these appointing authorities has clearly identified senior staff, and they know who they are. I mean, now, they may define it differently, but the governor, and there's obviously the governor, the secretary to the governor, the counsel to the governor, there's a limited pool who have senior staff status. Same with the controller. And I would think all the legislative leaders have their chief of staff and the like. It seems to me, if you're really trying to prevent a communication where someone's trying to communicate on behalf of the principal. It's their senior staff who does it. And while that may have some ambiguity to it, it seems to me you could ask the appointing authorities to identify who they deem to be their senior staff. So I thought that was a thought.
Well, we can ask the committee to take that under advisement too. At the risk of opening up this discussion that we had extensively yesterday and starting it all over again when it really should be in committee, I will say that I continue to believe that disclosure is the best kind of protection against either unintentionally being engaged in conversation that either is before or could subsequently be before the body. And that is, if we encounter, and I know it sounds a little nuts, but if we encounter anyone over whom we have authority and have a conversation with them, I think just a quick communication to and as Commissioner Groenwegen shakes her head, we'll take it up in committee.
Well, but that's the problem. If you're not part of the committee,
right?
How do you take it?
Well, you actually can come to the meeting.
Well, I did go to the meeting,
right.
but
That's right.
And we're ultimately going to vote on it.
And we're ultimately going to vote on it. It's going to come back to the body.
So
The commission's got to approve it. Wait now.
no, I understand. But when you've got a committee of, what was there? There are
8.
7, 8 members out of a 10-member body.
It's 6 plus our chair who's ex officio.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got a quorum of the commission on the committee. And then even though it's going to come back for a vote, it kind of doesn't matter what the non-members think, because if consensus has been arrived at, then what's the role of...
But you're going to help contribute to that consensus if you participate in the discussion. I mean, it would be better to have the comments on the front end of the discussion rather than
Precisely.
On the, right.
Which means, how do non-committee members...
Come to the meetings.
Well, and yes, I understand, but there's materials distributed in advance. If people don't know I want to come to a meeting, Commissioner Ayers, I heard yesterday, had done a memo with some of her concerns. Commissioner Cardozo mentioned that the Communications Committee had a draft plan. If you want to offer your input, even if you're not a member of the committee, it seems there should be a way to do it, solely for the sake of efficiency. And I don't know how to accomplish that end.
I think just come to the meetings. If you have materials you want distributed, distribute them. And if there are things that you want from the committee, simply ask the chair.
As opposed to just having it be understood that committee chairs share materials with the entire commission as an FYI if they're not members?
Would you like to make that motion?
Sure, I'd make that motion.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Looks like it's going
Well,
fast.
I think there are instances where a staff member may be thinking out loud and would like some input, and may think that a smaller discussion to begin with might be more constructive than having 11 different people chiming in. I think it's going to depend upon the circumstances of each issue. So I think we should say where appropriate, where there's no objection or what have you, but there may be concerns that can't be foreseen today, that a smaller group discussing a particular issue might be a better way to start. So I think to mandate this would be a mistake.
I think we'll be able to work through it, though. There'll be some issues that maybe more members want to be active and want to be heard. And then there's other issues that perhaps they'll wait and see what the smaller group reports back. This issue seems to be pretty significant for all members and very important. So I would welcome input from everyone.
I echo that, and I would suggest that perhaps it be done on a more ad hoc basis in terms of depending on what the issue is. Something like this, which really affects all of us in terms of our code of conduct, absolutely. But there could be things that need to be, actually, the answer is I don't know.
My question is, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, and then we'll do.
My question would be, though, but if if the work of the committees is to be done in public, as we know, then if the public can watch what's going on, and now maybe they don't see all the documents, but if the public has greater access and ability to understand what the commission does than the members, that strikes me as curious. And
No.
to do it on an ad hoc basis,
No, I think I withdrew that.
oh, I'm sorry.
I stopped myself and said, never mind.
Oh, okay. But and to Commissioner Cardozo's point, I understand there are times when people may, particularly in the context of a meeting, they just may be thinking out loud. I'm more interested in written materials. If staff have taken the time, or a commission member has taken the time to reduce their thinking to paper, which I think should regularly be the case to make sure the discussions are focused, then I don't see the downside to that being distributed as an interagency communication that's still deliberative, it's non-final.
Looks like a majority of the commissioners agree with you, but let's see. Commissioner Carvalho, and then we'll take a vote.
So, I kind of think that along the lines of what you're saying, Nancy, is like as soon as a product is ready, like for example, our communications report is substantially ready, whether or not we're presenting it at this meeting, I think as soon as something is ready to at least be voted on, we should get it. I was a little concerned that these issues were coming up for this meeting because I had not heard about them at all, and I didn't have enough time to really delve into it, and I felt like I hope we're not voting on this at this meeting because it really is extremely important, and I had no idea about it. So I think as soon as, whether or not you want to distribute all committee materials to all the commission members, I think when something is in a substantially finished form, we should get it. Like the communications plan we'll be addressing at the next meeting, but there's no reason that everyone shouldn't get it now because it's ready, and why not have as much lead time as possible, amongst the commissioners to review it and be ready for that meeting. So I think maybe kind of like a hybrid of what you're suggesting, and just as much notice as possible to commissioners about.
So what's the motion?
I think the motion is that the chairs will distribute all committee materials to all of the commissioners.
Okay, and we don't need to address whether or not the other members that are not a member of the committee can participate because
they
that's a
can.
Given.
Yes, absolutely.
That's already.
Yeah.
I would suggest that we leave it up to the commissioner, the chairman of the committee should distribute it unless for some reason he or she decides there's a reason not to.
So do you accept that as a friendly amendment?
Can you give me an example of why a decision would be made not to share?
I don't know as I think about it today, but I think there should be discretion in case an issue arises that is very sensitive. For example, when someone says, I think we should censure Commissioner Groenewegen, I'm just using that as an example.
I could imagine that coming up.
I just think leaving the discretion, not to make it absolute, but consistent with the idea that there's a real presumption of distributing everything, would just give us a little bit about if the unforeseen issue comes up.
Commissioner Whittingham?
I would say no. I think if we're going to talk about transparency, the members of the commission should have all the documents. Let's be transparent with our members. We're making decisions. We're deliberating. The more time we have to consider things, the better. It shouldn't be that one commissioner can know something and the other commissioners can't.
Yeah, for example,
Yeah, go
excuse
ahead.
me.
Yeah.
We had not had another committee meeting with lobbying, but Commissioner or Director Quinn was kind enough to do a nice memorandum to the members with some plans, the future, things we've already talked about. And it's very comprehensive, thank you. And this is something that I was going to suggest anyway, that we distribute it to everyone, because I think it's important for everyone to see this. And it's just really, for all intents and purposes, it's a more comprehensive plan on what we've already talked about. What are the priorities? What do we plan to do? There are some ideas here and some plans to go through the lobbying application with the entire commission and walk everyone through that so that we understand, what the people that are required to do this have to go through, as well as the public search issue. So I don't see the harm if we, so to speak, CC everyone on everything the committee's doing. Then the commission members that aren't a member of that committee can look at it and say, geez, I'd like to be heard on this.
Sure.
Or, geez, I like where this is going. I watched, I listened. I don't think my input is important today.
Listening to the debate, I'm inclined to agree. And I would suggest that that correspondence among the members of the committee also be circulated to the entire committee. For example, Commissioner Ayers wrote a very comprehensive discussion of what a representative means, what ex parte means, et cetera, with regard to our conversations. And it was a very great help so that everybody would do it. So we just do a hit all. And the real reason, I think, ultimately, Commissioner Groenewegen hit it right on the head. If it's something we're going to be talking about at an open meeting, committee meeting, then why shouldn't everybody on the commission know what's going on?
Other comments? Are we ready? Sure. Commissioner James?
I think I agree with what's generally been said. If, in fact, commission members are going to be invited to all the committee meetings, it certainly makes sense for them to have the materials that are going to be discussed at those committees.
Okay. Ready to vote. All those in favor of the motion to that would require committee chair, to distribute all materials to all commissioners for each committee meeting. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so it's where are we? 9-1. All right. Okay. Any other committee reports? All right, we will go then to our meeting dates.
The meeting dates, proposed meeting dates for the commission for the period from July through December 2023 are under tab E. There's no meeting scheduled for August. Should a need arise, it would be possible to have a special meeting call. So that's always an option. And with respect to December, at this time, we're going to defer setting a firm date for a December meeting. We'll wait and see what necessity exists once we complete the November meeting and what perhaps more urgent or exigent matters are pending at that time and whether we will need to convene a meeting of the commission. So we'll just let that float at this time.
And can we assume that we'll continue the relative alternate Albany, New York emphasis? Well, it can be, but presumably, therefore, since the June meeting is in Albany, the July meeting, to the extent people can make it, would be encouraged to come to New York and vice versa.
Yes, and we would resume the same cycle in September through the end of the year.
Do we need to approve these?
We do.
Okay.
We need a vote.
So a motion to approve the meeting dates as stipulated under tab E.
So moved.
Commissioner Austin and seconded by Commissioner James. Any more discussion on this? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, passes. Proposed regulation authorizing the issuance of subpoenas, etc.
Yes, this is under tab F in the agenda book. As previously discussed, this is a provision, a new provision for Part 941, our regulations governing adjudicative, investigative matters and appeals. The provision is designed first to effectuate the provision in section 9410 sub C of the executive law, which authorizes the commission.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is
Yes.
it under tab G?
Tab F, I'm
Tab
sorry,
F.
F.
No, you said F. I just.
Oh, am I in the wrong
Looks
tab?
like my.
There's F and G. The person starts with
Well, the
F.
first one is F.
And then the second is.
F is just the one new subsection, 941.3
I'm looking at the electronic version. I guess maybe it's different there.
Page 30, page 30. Electronically, it is page 33.
Okay, thank you.
This provision has been in effect on an emergency basis since October. It allows staff to take advantage of the provision in executive law, section 9410C, which permits staff on notice to the chair to issue subpoenas, calling for the production of papers as well as individuals to come in to give statements. It also correspondingly, subject to the same terms, authorizes staff to communicate outside the agency confidentially. And it gives staff the ability, therefore, to conduct the preliminary review that's called for by the statute under 10C in examining matters before elevating them to formal investigations. We've been using this on an emergency basis quite effectively before staff reaches out outside the agency to develop information. I inform the chair. I'm now copying all commissioners. The provision itself calls for the commissioners to be informed at the next meeting, commissioners at large, but we're informing everyone at the same time of it, and it's working quite smoothly. We have not issued any subpoenas thus far pursuant to that provision, and we wouldn't do so unless we had elevated a matter to a formal investigation under the statute. But the current emergency is going to run out on April 28th, and we would like to have this on a permanent basis. It's not binding in perpetuity. The commission, of course, can change it at any time. We just commence another rulemaking, but our experience so far has been quite favorable. It's moved quite smoothly, and it's given staff the ability to keep commissioners informed as matters come in. Otherwise, we would be stymied because of the confidentiality provisions in subsection 1011 from even reaching out to agencies when we were, for example, we received complaints of talking to anyone outside the agency. So it's a fundamental part of the process we conduct, particularly with respect to communications. And it's coordinated with the statute. The statute allows us to, provided the authority is granted by the commission, to issue those subpoenas. And it's totally consistent with the plan that allows staff, when the threshold is met, or the commission, to elevate a matter from preliminary review status to a formal investigation.
Commissioner Groenewegen, you look like you're ready to
ask a question.
Jump into action.
I think I need a face mask.
And it has been circulated many, many times. So there's no, every commissioner has seen this provision many times, and you've seen it in operation many, many times since October.
It's funny, my facial expression was relating to that and all these regulations. I know we've seen different iterations at different times over, many months, I mean.
This has not changed.
No,
This has
I'm
not
not.
changed a bit.
No, iteration.
And I should add, let me just add, just so, it's been out for public comment. We have received no.
Right. No,
unfavorable comment with respect to it. The only
understand,
comment
I'm not.
that came in related to said it was fine and related to
I'll cut to
something
the
else.
chase. Don't worry, I'm not looking to slow this down. Okay, that's the good thing. My question was that on so many of these regulations, because they come back at different times, because the emergency's expiring, sometimes they're brand new, sometimes they're just, what do you call that when you make a conforming changes? Would it be possible before each one of these regs just to have a little blurb that staff prepares that says, this is now before you, it's on an emergency basis, we're hoping to get final and so that you don't have to go back and say, is this one new, is this one not new? So that the essence of why we're looking at it again is instantly known. The other thing that I think would be helpful is if some of these regs are going to go through a committee, if they've been through the committee, that would be good to know too, because if the committee has taken the time to painfully wordsmith, so be it. We don't want to have to do that again, but it just seems it could make this part of the meeting go faster.
Yeah, and we had agreed at, I don't know if it was the last time we discussed this provision or the time before, that because the commission could change it subsequently, as the committees and the commission as a whole continues the process of evaluating the entire body of statutes, regulations, and advisory opinions that we're dealing with, it will allow these necessary conforming amendments to go through with the understanding that they could be repealed, modified, amended, and so on at some future time. In other words, you're asking whether it's gone through the committee. The committee, I believe it's the legal committee, but it may have been pushed to the special committee to consider. It's somewhere on the docket. But in the meantime, this has been, I believe, a non-controversial provision that would be very useful for us to have on a permanent basis, in the sense until some decision is made to take an entirely different approach to the interpretation of the statute, we would be able to take advantage of it.
Commissioner Cardozo.
I think what Commissioner Groningen is suggesting is, obviously, what's next to Exhibit F, we've gone through a number of times, and the explanation is very simple. And so there could have been a note on the agenda or on this that says this is simply, the next step in what we've discussed 3 times. As distinct from the next to Exhibit G, which there may be just pro forma changes, I'm not sure, but I don't think the substance of this has ever been reviewed by the commission itself before. I may be wrong, but I think the point that's being made here is save us the time. Once we saw we've already done this, no need to really study it. Maybe we should be studying a little bit more on Exhibit G. So if a little excerpt on the agenda to explain that would save us all a lot of time.
No, I understand that. That hasn't been the custom. There's no problem with having an additional write-up. We'll just add that to the process.
I'll be brief, and I think the other issue was, I think we understand that we can change them if the need occurs, but I think your point was the current, as it stands before us now, we would like to know, was it looked at and what were the concerns, so that not that we can't change it in the future, but what this is in front of us today.
Almost a legislative history. This is the second application for a emergency. We previously heard it on
whatever's simplest for staff to do that.
I could run it. It's actually been up, just so everyone now knows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. It's been accepted 5 times.
Yeah, just to add to that, I would strongly encourage us to put that not in the agenda, but in the introductory language. In federal regulations, when you put something out for notice and comment, there's an introduction that gives the procedural history of the document in question and identifies these are conforming amendments, or the major change that these amendments make is X. And I think that it's not only useful to us, but to the public when they see what we're voting on, or when we invite comment, followed by, on the latter end of notice and comment, a summary that says everybody loved it, or like we got some negative comment, right? But I think it's important not just for the commissioner's purposes, although very important for that. And the other thing I just wanted to say was my sort of, I do agree, yes, let's pass the things that need to be passed now, but in terms of deferring the conversation about plain language that I had raised earlier, or the comprehensive review that we're supposed to take under PLL 94, I just wanted to ask, because I don't personally feel clear on who's in charge of that comprehensive review or where it's happening. And so again, not a concern about this regulation at all, But I just wanted to check in. Do we know who's leading that comprehensive review and who's part of it? Is it a committee? Is it multiple committees, or how is that?
I don't think we've resolved it, actually. Okay. So let me just say, let's ask staff to think about it for us, talk to a few of us about it, and then come back with a recommendation at the next meeting.
Thank you.
And now that we're all on.
Sorry?
Could you clarify that, or what you mean by speak to a few of us and then come back?
Well, I think speak to the people who have a real interest in it, in the plain language review of so for example, Commissioner Ayers, anyone else who wants to discuss it, and then come back with a recommendation.
Well, but it's also the POL 94 comprehensive review. I mean, my plain language is part of that. I'm sorry, executive law.
Executive law, sure.
Thank you. The executive law 94 comprehensive review, I think.
Yeah, on the staff side, staff is, and we have discussed it previously, but not for a couple of meetings. Staff is putting together an analysis of the body of advisory opinions and where they fit within the statutory scheme as well as their internal consistency. So there are roughly 400, I think, advisory opinions in total, plus some additional lobbying act advisory opinions on top of that. So we are in the process of doing that.
But it's also the regs that we have to look at and revisit.
Well, yeah.
And
Consistency.
that, do we take them by topic and distribute them among committees? Does the delegation committee just do it? That's really the idea that we need to address.
And I think, so I think we need a plan, we need a recommendation from the staff as to how we're going to pursue this.
But let me just say, I'm sorry.
Obviously, we will have a chance to comment, chime in, change it, redirect it, and then vote on how we go forward. I think Megan Mottola is our Deputy Director of Lobbying.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I also am the one who submits all the regulations. So just to clarify, we do follow the State Administrative Procedure Act, SAPA. So we do have to submit all of our regulations through the State Register, and with that, there's accompanying documents that include explanation of the history, what has been previously published, a needs and benefits analysis. There's others. There's a RFA, a rural analysis. Like there's all the required documents that we submit for SAPA, which includes an assessment of public comment if we do receive comments as well. So all of that we already do for SAPA.
Oh, great. So
you could just
maybe we could just put that in the
after the first submission, we have all of that. So we have this several times over for the two provisions that are on today, which are the last two conforming sets of amendments that have not yet been passed upon by the commission as a whole.
Quick question.
Yes.
But that's all in the state register. Once you file it, it's a public document in the state register, which means anybody who wants to go to the state register can see. Would it be possible to put in our materials just a link to the state register? So if you want to see the background, if you care, you can just go and look at it.
Well, yeah, if we can, we can put the link in. If we can't do an active link, I don't know. We can provide.
Doesn't have to be an active.
We can provide the summaries.
Whatever's easiest for staff.
From those.
Okay.
So this is something that once we vote on it is going to go in the state register with that material?
Yeah, every time you vote. On emergencies and emergencies go in the state register. Upon filing their emergency, they're already effective if it's an emergency, but it doesn't go into the state register it's like on a 2-week lag. So every Tuesday is a deadline. So once I file, that Tuesday is when the deadline is. Then 2 weeks from that day, they're published.
Thank you. What I was getting at is, would it be so if we were to see that stuff, it would be actually the draft before it goes out, because it doesn't go in the state register until we approve it.
Yes.
We could look at the state register materials from earlier iterations, but I guess I wonder, would it be an undue burden on staff to ask that, when we get the drafts of these, we also get the drafts of the accompanying material that would have those explanations? if that's not too much of a burden.
No,
I think that would be
we can, it's just more paper.
Okay, great.
It's just more paper.
Great.
Once,
Paper, so thank you.
once we have the adoption, in this case, we've had 5 emergency adoptions, so we do have the summaries. But we can prepare those in advance,
I think that would be very helpful.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so are we ready to have a motion to adopt this particular proposed regulation? Commissioner Carney and Commissioner Gronway.
To adopt permanently and also to extend the current emergency adoption until the permanent adoption becomes effective, because we have a lag of, it's going to be a couple of weeks, I think.
Yeah, so moved.
So moved, okay. So moved by Commissioner Carney, seconded by Commissioner Groenewegen. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now on the extension of the emergency adoption of proposed conforming amendments, etc.
This is part 941 in whole. The conforming amendments to correct the agency name, the statutory cross-references. There are also some adaptations that had to be made in order to conform the procedures we're following to those that are in the new statute in current Executive Law Section 94. It's on for an emergency or an extension of the emergency adoption because we did propose, in response to some of the comments we got, an amplification of the definition of victim. We had used in hoc verba the definition of victim from the statute, which is a new definition, in section 9410. That's being used. Some of the commenters asked if we could expand that definition, which defines victim in terms of direct harm suffered from a violation of the laws we enforce. We didn't feel we could go so far as to include indirect harm because the statute was quite specific. But we did elaborate somewhat on the nature of harm that would be embraced by the definition. And so we can't adopt this because the public comment period on that change is still going on, but we do need to extend the emergency adoption. And I think we can adopt, Megan, we can adopt at the next meeting, correct?
Yep, public comment ends the 29th. Once we public comment.
Motion? So moved. I'm sorry. Let's get it on the table, then we'll discuss it. Is there a second? All right. So Commissioner James, Commissioner Austin, and then Commissioner James. Seconded. Commissioner Groenewegen.
On the definition of victim, and I'm sorry if I've seen this before, but when I was reading this iteration, I found it very confusing. And that, is any of this new from what we've seen before?
No.
Okay, because then.
Well, you saw it at the last emergency adoption.
Okay, because.
It was not in the initial proposal.
So I'm looking at where it says, victim shall mean, and then we have well, it's not, it's the second page of, page 2 of the reg, at the very bottom.
Got it.
So victim means what victim means. And then there's a new parens 1, and I'm not sure what that's doing there. But then the victim may also, but not necessarily the plaintiff. That's a separate question I have. But then it says 2, victim includes without limitation individuals alleging harm of any kind, blah, blah, blah. It seems to me that sentence number 2 is really more of a definition of what we mean by what could be included within direct harm. And it struck me as overly complicated. And I was wondering why it couldn't say, going back to the beginning, victim shall mean any individual who has suffered or is alleged to have suffered direct harm, including but not limited to physical, emotional, or reputational injury or loss, to make what the whole of that second sentence about victim is really trying to to
In other words-
explain the nature of
In other words,
types
the
of harm.
definition is direct, and then the definition has including but not limited to.
Well,
Should.
right, because what does direct harm, what can direct harm mean? Direct harm can mean, among other things, harm that's physical, emotional, or reputational injury or loss.
Correct.
But to have that be part of the definition of victim as opposed to part of the definition of harm just struck me as confusing. I don't know why we drafted it, though, but...
Yeah, what we did originally was add the definition of victim in hoc verba from the statute to the regulation. It was a new definition.
Right, that I know.
And a new provision in section 94.2.
Right.
Adding that. And so we added that right into the regulations. We
Got it.
received a comment.
Right, I know.
Taking issue with direct.
Right.
And
wanted...
And we didn't think we could, without a statutory change, expand the range of harm or causality simply by interpretation. However, we did believe that we could give examples of direct harm.
Got it.
That would be somewhat clarifying of the definition. So that's why it was, historically, that's kind of the etymology of the provision, if you will.
I just found it
So
clumsy.
why couldn't we say under
As
two,
more fully defined.
instead of victim includes, direct harm shall include
That makes more sense, because that's what you're defining. It's not victim,
Right.
you're defining direct harm.
in subparagraph 2.
That was my point.
Or as more fully defined in subdivision 2, when you get into direct harm. But,
Then you don't need subparagraph.
yeah, but I like your suggestion.
Did you have a comment on 1, subsection 1?
No, well, one was fine. One was the original.
No, I thought you said you had a
Oh,
comment.
the other thing, yeah, oh, thank you. Just a quick question. When would the victim not be the complainant?
I could see many circumstances where the victim would be the complainant.
Would not be the
Yeah.
complainant?
I see Commissioner Carney doing something, saying something or doing something, and I report him.
Saying something
I'm
or
not
doing
the-
something
I'm
to
the
you.
complainant, but I'm not the victim.
Right. Right.
Huh.
I'm standing up for you.
And there are instances in the law where there's an obligation to report observed
Gotcha.
violations.
And does that
Statute.
happen often?
We can discuss that in executive session, but in terms of frequency, it does occur.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have this motion on the table. We have, I guess, what we can call a friendly amendment to under, if we can.
We gotta
Yes,
start
we
the time
cannot do
period.
this. I guess, go ahead.
We'll
Sure.
have to renotice it.
Yes, so with this change, it
Sure.
will be considered a substantial revision. So it'd have to go back out for revised
Right.
rulemaking in another 45-day period.
So we may be doing another emergency extension. Okay.
Well,
All righty, are we ready to vote with the amended language?
So it'll read in paragraph 2, direct harm includes without limitation.
Yeah.
Or
But
the term direct harm as referred to.
For purposes of this subsection,
Right,
because
right.
we're not defining harm for other purposes.
Right.
All right.
Absolutely.
What,
I don't know where that.
what's the language we're,
Yes.
what's the language we're voting on?
Subdivision 2, eliminate victim and replace that with direct harm shall include or includes,
Right.
and then the rest of it would be,
Or
So it
direct
would be-
harm as used in this paragraph.
okay, direct harm as used in this paragraph includes, and we would eliminate victim.
Right.
Replace it with direct harm as used in this paragraph. Is that right?
We have to take out individuals of it, with direct harm. It'd be
Yes,
direct harm includes
yes,
without limitation.
yeah.
Harm of
Yep.
any kind.
Without limitations.
Harm of any kind.
All right.
Eliminate individuals in alleging.
Yeah.
Yes.
harm of any kind, comma, including physical, emotional, reputational injury, or loss from any violation of the law that is subject to investigation under the jurisdiction of this commission, period.
All right, so that's the motion.
Limitation, any kind of harm included.
Yes, Commissioner Carvalho.
That's awkward.
So right now, we're extending the emergency
Yes, correct.
provision as amended right now.
Right.
And, okay.
It would be,
And
it would be, an-
And we can do this.
it would be a revised rulemaking, because we're making another change.
So the clock
Trigger
starts
another-
over.
I would do a
Yes.
revised rulemaking and emergency. So at the same time, I'll be submitting the revision and the emergency. So this revision will go into effect right away, but then it will still go out for 45-day period.
And there will be a further comment period, so.
Right.
Just said that.
Yeah, so, no, but what are the time, do you know the expiration times with the?
It's 45 days for revised.
I know, but this doesn't, this is a good point.
So it
Doesn't
is
read
from
well.
the date of publication in the
doesn't
state
read
register. So it'll
correctly.
be, the 45 days will start from the next filing date. Like, so if I can file it today, it'll go in 2 weeks from now.
And so if if we do an emergency extension as is, you don't have to do any of that. And then when it expires, because we are looking to change this anyway, right? We're looking to use, can you hear me? To use plain language. I mean, wasn't that why this was tabled last time? I'm just wondering if is it?
No, I just want to make sure we don't have a gap, because we do have matters ongoing under.
Yeah.
But
I
I'm
think,
saying maybe we
I
can
think what,
extend it as is
yeah,
for now.
but-
And
yeah, but I think we should just be clear that we will adopt these measures as permanent changes, but that does not preclude them from going through a plain language review at some other point. And I don't think we should hold anything up for permanent adoption because we want it to go through a plain language review somewhere down the road. I think we need these permanent rules on the books so that we can get on with our business, and then we'll deal with the issue of language and et cetera, when we get a proposal from staff that we all agree on.
So the motion is?
So the motion is, as you stated it, that we will approve this on an emergency basis as revised with the language direct harm without limitation, and I guess harm of any kind, et cetera.
Okay, so moved.
Means, right.
Second.
So Commissioner Carney, seconded by Vice Chair Austin. Any more discussion?
So is that a new motion? Or was that?
It's the same one. It's just a
Restatement.
a restatement of the motion.
In other words, the language?
Yeah.
Is the language a little bit different? I think we want to adopt the language that we worked on initially.
Correct. In terms of changing this
Right.
particular definition.
As I
Yes,
put on the record.
yes.
So
Did
just
you
to
understand
clarify,
that?
this
Sure.
is a motion for a notice of revised rulemaking, changing the changes you just made, and an emergency adoption. So then, effective right away,
Immediately.
we'll have.
Yes.
the
With this new language, yes.
Direct harm, and as used in this paragraph includes, and all the changes you just discussed.
Correct.
That's correct.
Right.
Okay.
And I want to make the point again that this will come back to us for permanent adoption. And I guess we don't want to be in the position of saying, we don't want to permanently adopt any of these change rules and regs because we're doing the plain language review. That should be seen as a completely separate process so that we can get these things on the books and staff can go to work.
And if I may, just to clean it up, there are two includes in that first sentence. Can we say direct harm without limitation includes harm of any kind, including, I mean,
Harm of any kind.
shall for the purposes be defined as? I'm not
Yeah,
sure. We need to clean that up a little bit, but
Direct harm
as
for,
as applied in this,
as
Direct harm without limitation is defined as harm of any kind, including physical, emotional, or reputational injury or loss from any violation of law that is subject to investigation under the jurisdiction of the commission.
But we have to say as defined in this section.
Yeah, so that's what we said initially. We eliminated the word victim. We replaced it with direct harm.
My only concern about limiting into this section is I'm not sure where else harm has been added in regulation, where else it is, if direct harm is someplace else. So, I mean, we can say in this part, so that way it's all of the adjudicatory procedure part, rather than just this individual section.
Okay. What do you think of that?
In this part, shall mean.
We're going to get rid of shall. No shall. Will mean.
Means.
Means.
Direct harm.
Harm of any kind, including. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, do you want to read that into the record?
Sure.
So we're all on the same page?
Direct harm as applies to this part. Means, and then as it is, harm of any kind.
Are we clear?
Etc.
I thought there was already a motion on the table, and then we made a new one. That's why I was.
I think this is a clarification of the one that.
Lori, I'll give it to you later.
Okay.
Good. All right. So the motion is emergency adoption plus this change in the language that will go through the rulemaking process and review that says direct harm for the purpose of this section means, etc.
So moved.
Okay. And we have a motion on the table.
Purposes of this
For the
section.
purposes of this section.
This section or parts?
Or part.
It's one or the other.
It was suggested part.
Part. I don't think direct harm is used again in the provision, but just to be safe,
Right,
we'll make
okay.
it part.
For this part. All right. So we have a motion on the floor with this clarifying language that will have to go through the 45-day review. We're adopting an emergency provision with this change language. Is that clear? All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Ayes have it. Motion passes. So, I think we discussed section 8 when we talked about the legal committee. And the legal committee will continue to meet around both of these, the Commissioner Code of Conduct and the proposed meeting guidelines. Right? I'm assuming there's no more we need to say about this.
No, that's what we focused on at the last meeting.
Great.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a code of conduct for the staff of the commission?
Yes. Yep.
Not just the handbook?
It's in the handbook.
But, okay, and that's what the administration committee is reviewing and revising?
No,
That's what we're looking at.
yeah, I think that was.
Not, no, we're looking at ours, for the commission members.
Right.
My question is specific to the commission staff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're saying there's a section in here for the staff?
Oh, no, in our overall.
Oh, yeah,
the-
yes.
Our handbook.
Oh,
yes.
well, you mean your policy manual?
Yes,
Yeah,
in our policy manual.
yes,
Can we revise that, or that's
No.
what your committee's looking at?
yes.
Okay,
All right.
okay.
Is there any new or other business? Motion to adjourn to executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Do we need any other language surrounding this?
Just language that's in.
All right.
the
Motion to
provision.
adjourn to executive session pursuant to Public Officers Law, Section 105, and Executive Law, Section 94, subsection 11, to address matters concerning employment of personnel, pending litigation, and investigative and enforcement matter that is confidential pursuant to Section 94 of the Executive Law. The motion has been made and it's been seconded. All those in favor of adjourning to executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned to executive session. We'll wait until we are.
5.
Thank you. We are reconvening the public session, public portion of the meeting of the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government on this, the 25th of April. So we will have a readout from what was discussed in executive session.
Thank you. In executive session, the Commission discussed matters related to litigation and legal advice. The Commission discussed personnel matters. The Commission discussed informal guidance pursuant to Executive Law Section 94.7 and Part 932, the Commission's regulations. The Commission addressed legal advice concerning certain statutory compliance matters, and the Commission authorized steps in several investigative matters, closed 11 investigative matters, and discussed several other investigative and assessment matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Anything else to come before this body? Is there a motion to adjourn this public meeting?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Caraballo. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Let's hold on for 1 second until we end the live stream.